When you see it's intuitively what you see image. You don't see structural behavior. You see image. What do you see? You see craftsmanship. And what do you see? You see aesthetics. What do you see? You see settings. These are things that are that authenticity is defined by, not structural behavior, because it is in the background. So we need to put it in the front. Who will put it in the front? Engineers.
Welcome to Interfaces, the podcast of words and encounters. Interfaces are frontiers, contact zones, where things meet and transform. Each episode, one word, one interview. Today's word is structure with Mentor Llunji.
So, welcome, Mentor, and thank you for joining this episode of Interfaces.
I'm glad to be here, Simona. I'm glad to be here. Very glad.
Thank you. I'm glad too. And the word we decided to talk about is structure, especially structure in cultural heritage conservation. Our exchange began years ago with the books. Your curiosity led you to my Pitture murali I degradi di origine meccanica, which explores mechanical deterioration in mural paintings. You then shared your Seismic Architecture, a work I deeply appreciated for how it reveals the expressive power of structural thinking. Since then, each new publication between us felt like a continuation of a shared conversation, and I'm very glad for that. Before we dive into today's word, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listener. Could you share a bit about your background and what draws you to structure, not only in your professional work, but also in your writing as a way of sharing and shaping knowledge?
Do you know what, Simon? It's very difficult to introduce oneself because people either are too humble, either over-exaggerate their achievements. So I'll try to be very objective. I say I can say that I can describe myself as an author, which is at the same time practicing engineer, and I use my practicing engineering experience to write books. This is a shorter definition, I think, of my way of working. And it's a little bit paradoxical because I entered in civil engineering studies through architecture. I liked architecture, but at that time it was impossible to study architecture, so I decided an alternative, and I started to study civil engineering. But from the very start, I didn't treat it as a technical profession. I always looked at it as something that can be creative, regardless if you solve a beam or a big structure, but I always try to treat it as something which is a part of architecture. And it's also very interesting because my first job was presidential palace in Kazakhstan. It was the most important building in that country in 2002. It was my first job. And usually that job comes at the end of the career. I received it as my first job. So it decided my professional career, because from that time I gained confidence. I gained confidence in the sense that I want to learn more and to look for important buildings and complex structures, etc., which by the time gave me some knowledge. And as I gained knowledge, I thought that I can share that knowledge with someone else. And as I liked writing, I decided to write books. This is the way that I came to the books. But I never liked engineering books because they were written in a kind of way that as the author wrote them for themselves, not for the students to understand it. So I tried to combine my practicing knowledge with my little bit talent for writing in order to explain these complex issues, such as, for example, seismic design, which is unattractive as a issue. And I tried to make it a little bit attractive to architects and to engineers. and to connect them in order to speak the same language. And I published it in 2016, and I think till this day is probably the most comprehensive book on that regarding that issue in English language. Then I continue to write other books and doing seismic design, structural design, etc., etc. This is in short what as introduction for my background.
Thank you. And this maybe explain that why you at the very beginning thought that engineering is not creative, although it is. It can be.
Yes, it can be actually, because it depends how you approach it. For example, my inspiration were always Italian engineers. Not because you are Italian, but sincerely, Riccardo Morandi, Pierluigi Nervi, Sergio Musmecchi, they were the first engineers that I read books about. And when I saw their creation, I saw that in their structure, it's architecture. And you cannot differentiate it in their designs. And then I was inspired from other engineers. So it's a kind of, the point is that it's you, from your job, for example, from your work in heritage, it's very difficult to put a distinction between architecture, structure. What is structure? What is architecture? That is very difficult to put a line. It's the same with modern building. It is the same way. Depends how you approach it. My approach is to see it as indispensable part of architecture, of creation, and to look for the most simplest solution, because I believe if you look for simple solution, that's the best way to the beauty of the structure. That's the whole philosophy.
You have a capacity to say complex thing in a very simple way.
Yes, it's a kind of talent. Yes, if you can say.
Yeah, and talking about structure, we both explore structure not just as a technical fact, as you just said, but as a form of perception. Your work as a structural engineer places design at the core of architecture itself, challenging the common view that treats engineering and as a purely functional secondary step.
Yes, that's it's if we come back to the art and architecture, probably that's the influence that gave me this thought. And if we understand, for example, that we as civil engineers, as structural engineers, we have a collective memory, which is our collective memory. Our collective memory is Avatar created in Renaissance by Leonardo da Vinci or Filippo Brunelleschi, which neither of one was engineer or architect. They were only masters or creators. And as Professor Stefan Poloni used to say, very, very interesting thing, he said, look at Hagia Sophia. It was built by Isidore of Miletus, which was sculpture, and Anthemius of Tralles, which was mathematician. To designate either one of them as architect or engineer, it will be foolhardy. They were simple creators. And that's the point of architecture and engineering. They were divided somewhere in 19th or 20th century because of the development of technology. Architects went towards art, engineers went toward technology or towards science. But what is happening today, as the technology is galloping in its development, I think they will come back together again. Because what is happening?
Yeah, great.
It is happening that today, what did engineers in 100 years? They dealt with numbers. It was the bedrock of our profession. Today, numbers are taking us from us. Digital tools are solving the problems within 5 minutes. So if you are left without numbers, what we will do?
There is a problem of identity.
we should go somewhere, or either towards architecture, either towards IA-assisted software, or will be obsolete or totally irrelevant in the society. So we need to go somewhere. So where will we go? It will be clear in the 5 or 10 years more clearly.
Maybe there is a way, a perspective in strategies and how to orient new tools.
Yes, but the educational system is not thinking about that at all. Educational system is thinking as though we are studying in 70s and 80s. It's not adapting to the new trends and new way of developments of technology. Because we cannot stay put in the same place we were 20 or 30 years ago. Things are changing. We need to change our education system as well.
Absolutely. And right, just about the building behavior, structural behavior. In the first episode, in the first series of this podcast, there is an episode dedicated to the word authenticity in the cultural heritage conservation. And in this episode, I suggested that the structural behavior is part of a building's authentic identity, something to understand, respect, and conserve coherently. Do you agree? Because usually when in cultural heritage conservation, there is a high attention to aspect, image, and materials. Structural conservation, due maybe to the improvable conversation and communication between engineers and the rest of the professional, is not so well known or taken in account as it, in my humble opinion, deserve. Do you agree? What do you think?
Yes, I of course agree 100%, because when you talk heritage, it's the same as in modern buildings we design every day. It's the same thing. But I don't blame them, because when you see it's intuitively what you see image. You don't see structural behavior, you see image. What do you see? You see craftsmanship. And what do you see? You see aesthetics. What do you see? You see settings. These are things that are that authenticity is defined by, not structural behavior, because it is in the background. So we need to put it in the front. Who will put it in the front? Engineers, like you, with writing, with doing these talks that we are doing right now, and it's other thing is very important. Because for a non-engineer, it's very important to distinct its importance. How a non-engineer can distinct what is structure and what is architecture. When architecture ends and when structure begins, it's very difficult to distinct that. And other thing is, as I already told you, it's about intellectual heritage. If we don't put structural behavior, we are losing intellectual heritage. How those people understood materials, forms, resistance. We lose that. For example, go in a Japanese temple. A beautiful timber work. Joints masterfully realized. If you replace it with steel truss, you lose everything. So you lose intellectual heritage. I'm not talking about material heritage. You lose intellectual heritage. You lose knowledge. You lose understanding. You lose your story. And it's the same with mural paintings. The same with, for example, structural mistakes. Let's say cracks. Let's say settlements. Let's say interventions. There are stories for. There are stories. If you erase them, you erase the story. But the most difficult thing is to explain this to non-engineers. This is the most difficult thing. This is the reason I wrote those books. Probably you wrote the books for the same reason.
Absolutely.
To make these issues more close to people that are not related to these issues, in order to make possible the conversation.
Yes, to build a bridge.
To build a bridge. That's the whole point.
Intellectual bridge, conversational bridge, to give people
to communicate,
to express their thinking. Yes. And that, because intuitive, I can say that I work a lot with the conservators, and I can tell that they have intuition. They see things, but they have not the language and as well the concept to express them, and they don't know to who address their question.
Yes, that's right, correct.
So we can say, and we agree that
engineering, 100%.
Engineering profession is completely unknown.
It will remain unknown until we made it known. It depends on us, I think.
I completely agree. And this is why
Yes.
I asked you, I invited you to participate to this podcast, because I think that your point of view as a full complete engineer, structural engineer, and so generous in sharing your thoughts is a good start to try to make conservation professionals what an engineer can be to them.
Yes, that's
So talking about the tradition and innovation, often they meet in conservation work. And as you said, with the a very fast development of technologies, it goes very fast. And it's starting, we can see them not really in full potential, but it started to converge. Traditional structural techniques hold a cultural value, while modern engineering provides a new tool and understanding. How these two approaches interact in your practice, if they, and how can their integration, in your opinion, support the sustainability and the respect for cultural heritage?
You know what? When you talk about sustainability, because it's a word that we hear every day, and but we are not practicing sustainability, but we hear about sustainability. And when you talk, for example, about heritage, you need to balance aesthetics, stability, and sustainability. And to do that, you know better than anyone. Sometimes it's impossible. Sometimes it's impossible. Regarding modern tools and traditional tools, what I notice in those buildings that I was engaged, there's a pretty clear distinction, because traditional tools we use to create aesthetic compatibility. Modern tools we use for diagnosis, or there are cases when you introduce modern, let's say, reinforcing or conservation methods, but mainly use traditional tools for aesthetic compatibility. For example, in my practice, we use FEM modeling, finite element modeling, to build old buildings. Depend on the software you use, this model can be more sophisticated or less sophisticated. We try always to do less sophisticated because it's huge work in order to replicate fully the building as it is, with all the layers, with all the materials. And you receive this map of stresses. Depending on map of stresses, you decide about what methods you will use. So at this point, we are very distinct. We receive the results, then we will use traditional materials in order to have compatibility, aesthetic compatibility. In the last period, these days, 10 years, we have special materials for grouting, fiber polymer elements for strengthening. For me, which is more interesting, is base isolation, which I hope I will implement soon, because it's aesthetically not intrusive and provides superb resistance. And these are modern tools which we can use right now. But in our environment, like, for example, in Balkans, you know it very well, we still are relied on traditional materials that we use for traditional building and heritage building. We use some modeling softwares, but it's still, I think, its distinction is still much very clear. It's not still converging so much, at least in this region where I work. I don't know how it is for example, in France or in Italy where you work, how they converse.
It depends. It depends a lot on the working team. And this was my second question. How do you face conversation about the materials you choose, the method you choose, with people that manage the whole conservation project when it arrives, such as architects? Can you explain how these modern tools are, in your opinion, sustainable for the historic building?
It's I think it's a matter of if you are intending about collaboration between different professions. I think it's the same as in modern design. We have a problem with collaboration, big problem, because engineers simply are not educated to do especially sensitive intervention. Simply, they are not aesthetically, sensitively, materially prepared and educated to do so. I can guarantee you from 100% of engineers, probably 2% are capable to enter in conversation for conservation with other teams such as architect, because we talked several days ago about reversibility. We simply, for example, in our educational system, we don't have concept of reversibility. We put a column, we put a beam, and that's it. We don't think about reversibility. We don't think about using older materials. We don't know older materials. I'm not talking here about aesthetic compatibility. We don't know nothing about history. That is the educational system of civil engineers today. Not here, everywhere in the world. So we need to self-educate. What I did, for example, we had strengthening of structures in our faculty, but never was we talking about heritage. Never. And when I finished my university, I bought many books about heritage strengthening, and because I needed for my books to write my books, so I probably read about a year for all these things that we don't learn in our education, during our education. But I will ask you, how many engineers are prepared to do that? Not so many. So educational system, I think, is the core problem in order to facilitate our collaborations. That's the whole point. Not only education for engineers, education for architects as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Education in structure, conservationists as well. They need to be more educated in structural issues. So it's the only way to collaborate. There's no other way.
But also conservators can be involved because usually there are a lot of conservators that works on building.
I will tell you, sorry for interruption. Engineers are called last in the project. Where everything is finished, they are called last. Many times, architects propose the strengthening shape. Many times, engineers come there just to confirm the already picked solution. That's the reality, unfortunately.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. There is a lot of work to do in improving communication. And as we said before, communication is our concepts.
Yes, yes,
not just language. So
that's a crucial thing, I think, in all this in our profession.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And speaking about communication, as you mentioned it, can I ask you to do a little exercise for our conservators listener and try to explain in a very simple way what FEM are?
FEM is finite element method. It's you do a model. You do a model of the building, and you divide it in small pieces. And software calculate the deformation of those small pieces. And by calculating the deformation of those small pieces, forces, etc., he create a general picture of deformation of all structure. So we receive stresses, we receive deformation, all what we need in, for example, the heritage building. What are stresses, in which point are more stressed, and which part of the building will deform more. In those places, we intervene then with different kind of intervention structural, which of course should be arranged with conservationists, with architect. Are they intrusive? Are they aesthetic? Should we hide them? Should we hide them not? These are the questions that should be debated with other parts of the team.
So we can say that is a sort of 3D mosaics.
Yes, mosaic. Yes, mosaic of stresses. Yes.
Allows to engineers to understand how each little piece of this structure.
But we need to be careful, because many times when we do model, it's not realistic. It's just an approximation, because you have a layer of different kinds of materials, and you approximate a material, one type of material. You don't approximate all the material. And when, for example, you have a stone, you approximate the strength of that stone or materials that connect that stone. So it's when you receive results, you receive approximative results. Everything is approximative in engineering. Even though we call the engineering a science, it's not a science. We are doing these approximations all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's something. It's all theoretical. It's all theoretical,
yes.
and the only person that can interpret it because it creates the theoretical result is the engineer.
Yes. So it depends on the engineer how he interprets it and how he read the results.
So, if you could start today something to improve the collaboration between conservation professionals and engineer, what would you do?
Education. I will introduce a course in engineering faculties, not 1 year, 4-year course, about aesthetics, history, archaeology, and architecture. We need general education. When you do things that you are doing, you need general education. It's not a matter here of engineering, you need general education. The same thing with architecture. Today, architects, unfortunately, are designers. They used to be engineers sometimes. Today, they are educated as designers. They know very little about structure. Conservationists, they're intuitive more than about knowledge. So if you introduce knowledge to all these let's say, collaborators, they will speak the same language and they will understand each other much better. But I think the point is that engineering education should be much more aesthetically driven, especially right now that we have digital tools that are doing the job for us. You imagine 5 years from now, AI-driven software will take over all this calculation process. So what we will do, we'll be bystanders. So
we'll supervise.
Yes, supervise. We will have a lot of time to learn anything. So it's shift should be made in this time, I think.
And for a conservator, so that would like to know more about how an engineer works, what is the work of an engineer, and starting from very basic things, what would you? There are no books for that, apart from your book.
Your books. I recommend your books.
Thank you.
To read your books. Really. They are more than enough to understand what they need. They don't need nothing more than that.
Thank you. And I would say also your books, because they give the big picture about the structure.
Yes. In clear way, explain the same as your book. With clear drawings, clear examples, just need to read them, nothing more.
So, before we wrap up this very nice and pleasant conversation, thank you. I'd love you to touch just a lesser known side of your work. You are also a painter.
Yes, in free time, yes.
So, would you share how painting fits into, if does, your being an engineer, and how your experience the relationship between art and science? Let's stay in stereotypes.
No, it's I think it painting and drawing helped me to build my aesthetic side. And my aesthetic side helped me to better understand aesthetics of structures. It made me more sensitive in that direction. Besides that, it made me more, let's say, relax when I treat structures, because art is very, let's say, very relaxed. So I'm very relaxed when I treat even very complex structures. So in that way, it helped me a lot. And the best thing that painting and drawing is doing for me is when I introduce it between my work. For example, I just finished a very complex building. Now I will paint probably 2 weeks, and I will totally differentiate that time from the previous time, and I use it as a reset for next work. So it's a beautiful combination. Who don't paint and don't draw, please start drawing and painting. It's the best thing you can do.
It's a language.
It's a language, and it's you are meditating actually. You are meditating.
Absolutely.
You're focused on paints. You're focused on drawings. You are far from numbers, far from your everyday problems. So it's a beautiful thing. In jails they give painting to the jail to relax. So it's very relaxing thing.
Interesting comparison.
It's just in comparison, but it's very realistic.
So is there a special, particular technique, painting technique that you like more than others? Or in painting?
I use acrylic, and I paint something which you can call not modern painting, something between expressionism and modern painting. You look at painting and you understand what is there. It's not that it's super modern, but it's some kind of late expressionism combination with modernism, something like that. A lot of colors are there. I don't care about colors. I put them as I like. I don't bother myself to combine them with some specific rules. I just combine them as I like, and that's the whole point.
You are an intuitive painter.
Yes. Intuitive, yes. Intuitive engineer as well, actually.
For those who would like to learn about more about your work or your publication, or know your painting also, what they can consult? Do you have a website? Do you have
I have website. Yes, I have website. I have my blog where I write monthly, probably a review or a text monthly. I write just to keep myself busy. The best way to find about me is to read my books, especially the last one, Towards a New Engineer, which I think is how to say in Italian, capolavoro. My capolavoro. Because it's a philosophical book about structural engineering, and everyone who loves that profession should read it. It's I always wanted to read that kind of books. That's the reason I write it, because engineers usually write books how to design a beam, how to design a column, and nothing more deeper than that. That's very boring today. So I'm currently finishing the first draft of my second book, which is in the same nature. It's called Towards a New Seismic Design, which will be published probably in February or March. So I'm keeping myself busy.
So, of course, you will provide me with all the reference to get to your website and your blog and know more about that. And everything will be in the episode notes. So this is for our listeners, so that they can find any reference to get to you and to your work.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much to you, Mentor. It was a real pleasure, and
It was my pleasure.
I hope I will have you again in this podcast.
Every time, with pleasure.
Thank you very much. And I wait for your new book.
No, I will send it to you. You know that.
As usual.
It's tradition. So I will send it to you. As it will be published, I will send it to you immediately.
Is there something in the end of this episode that you would like to say? Especially
you asked everything. The question were perfect. I think we wrapped everything about structure, about conservation, about role of engineering. That I think it will be, I hope, interesting for the readers.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mentor.
Thank you too.
As we wrap up this episode of Interfaces, thank you for joining me in exploring cultural heritage through words and encounters. A heartfelt thanks goes to the team behind this podcast. Audio, Salvatore Melluso. Graphic design, Emanuela Nosari. Language, Tania Iacovenko. For my Italian listeners, you'll find my books Conservazione delle decorazioni architettoniche and Pitture murali, I degradi di origine meccanica in the show notes, along with all references mentioned today. I look forward to sharing the next word and conversation with you in the upcoming episode of Interfaces.